The great doors of the Galactic Council building opened with a soft hiss. Kyle Martinez walked through them slowly. His black suit looked simple next to all the colorful robes and armor worn by the alien delegates. But every eye in the massive room turned to watch him. Kyle was the human ambassador. He had been doing this job for 5 years now. In that time, he had learned that most aliens were afraid of humans. Not because humans were bigger or stronger. Most aliens were actually much larger than humans. The fear came from something else entirely. Lisa Green walked beside him. She wore the blue uniform of Earth's military. Her hand rested near her weapon, but she did not look worried. Lisa had fought in 3 wars before becoming Kyle's bodyguard. She knew how to handle trouble. As they moved toward their seats, Kyle noticed how the other delegates moved away from them. It was not obvious. The aliens pretended to check their papers or talk to their assistants. But slowly, surely, they all created space around the human section. A tall alien with skin like blue crystal leaned toward his helper. "Do you remember what happened at Kepler Station?" he whispered. His helper nodded quickly. The humans defeated an entire war fleet with just 3 ships. The enemy surrendered before the fighting even started. Kyle heard this conversation. His translator device picked up most alien languages. He had heard stories like this many times. Some were true. Some were made bigger each time they were told. But all of them had the same result. Aliens feared humans. The strange thing was that humans had never tried to make other species afraid. Earth's government wanted peace and trade. But somehow, humans had gained a reputation as the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Lisa sat down next to Kyle and looked around the room. She counted the exits automatically. Old habits from her military training. She also noticed how nervous the alien security guards looked. They kept staring at her weapon, even though dozens of other delegates were also armed. "They think we are going to do something crazy," Lisa said quietly to Kyle. Kyle nodded. "They always think that. The problem is, they are usually right." This was true. Humans did have a habit of doing unexpected things. Last month, a human trader on a space station had been attacked by pirates. Instead of running or fighting normally, the trader had turned the station's artificial gravity off and on repeatedly. The pirates became so sick they surrendered. No one had ever used gravity as a weapon before. 3 months ago, a human diplomat had ended a war by challenging both enemy leaders to a cooking contest. The leaders were so confused by this strange request that they started talking instead of fighting. They realized their war was actually about a simple misunderstanding. These stories spread quickly through the galaxy. Aliens began to see humans as completely unpredictable. If you could not guess what your enemy would do, how could you fight them? The worst part for other species was that humans seemed to enjoy being unpredictable. They would smile when they confused their enemies. They treated serious problems like puzzles to solve. This made them even more frightening to aliens who liked following rules and traditions. Kyle looked at the empty chairs around them. The nearest alien delegate was sitting 4 rows away. This always happened at these meetings. Other species wanted to keep their distance from humans. An announcement echoed through the chamber. The meeting was about to begin. Kyle pulled out his notes and prepared for what he knew would be a difficult day. Today, he was going to ask the Galactic Council to let humans become peacekeepers for the entire galaxy. He knew most delegates would think this was a terrible idea. Who would want the most unpredictable species in space to be in charge of keeping peace? But Kyle had good reasons for making this request. Human peacekeepers had solved 12 major conflicts in the past 2 years. They had done this without firing weapons or threatening anyone. They simply found creative solutions that no one else had thought of. The problem was convincing the council that humans could be trusted with this responsibility. Most aliens thought humans were too dangerous to give any official power. Lisa checked her watch. 5 minutes until showtime, she said. Kyle smiled. "Are you nervous?" "Never," Lisa replied. "But I think everyone else in this room is." She was right. The alien delegates were whispering among themselves. Some kept looking at the human section with worried expressions. Others were reading reports on their data tablets, probably reviewing human military actions from the past few years. The most interesting reactions came from the Altarian delegation. The Altarians were known across the galaxy for producing the best assassins. They were quiet, deadly, and efficient. But even they seemed uncomfortable around humans. Kyle had heard rumors that the Assassin Guild had recently changed their policies about human targets. Apparently, they were no longer accepting contracts to kill humans. The risk was too high, and too many assassins had failed or been killed trying. This was perhaps the strangest part of humanity's reputation. They had become too dangerous for even professional killers to handle. Not because humans were better fighters, but because they fought in ways that no one could predict or prepare for. The council president, a large alien with purple skin and 4 arms, stood up at the front of the room. "This session of the Galactic Council will now begin," he announced. Kyle stood up and walked toward the speaking platform. Every step he took was watched by thousands of alien eyes. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid. All of them looked very interested in what the human ambassador was about to say. As Kyle reached the microphone, he could feel the tension in the room. Everyone knew that humans never did things the normal way. Whatever Kyle was about to propose would probably surprise them all. He smiled and began to speak. The meeting room was hidden deep inside an asteroid in the Nexus system. No government knew this place existed. No police force could find it. This was where the galaxy's most dangerous killers came to do business. Thane sat at the head of a long, black table. His reptile skin was dark green with silver patterns. He had been running the Assassin Guild for over 200 years. In all that time, he had never seen his killers refuse a job because of fear. Today was different. 20 of the galaxy's best assassins sat around the table. Each one represented a different alien species. Each one was deadly in their own special way, but they all looked uncomfortable as they stared at the contract details on their screens. "The payment is 50 million credits, Thane said slowly. "For Ambassador Kyle Martinez, 100 million for Captain Lisa Green. The client wants both humans dead before they can speak to the council." The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Vera raised one of her sharp, clawed hands. She belonged to a species that looked like giant praying mantises. Her people were natural hunters who could move faster than most eyes could follow. "Guildmaster," Vera said in her clicking voice, "my species has killed prey for millions of years. We know when something is too dangerous to hunt." Thane's yellow eyes narrowed. "You are saying humans are too dangerous for you?" "I am saying humans do not follow the rules," Vera replied. "When we hunt, we expect our prey to run or fight in normal ways. Humans do neither." An assassin named Crix spoke up from the shadows. At the corner of the room, his species could become invisible by bending light around their bodies. They were perfect for sneaking up on targets. "I tried to kill a human traitor last year," Crix said. His voice sounded like wind through caves. "I studied him for 3 months. I learned his schedule, his habits, his favorite foods, everything." "What happened?" another assassin asked. "I attacked him in his quarters while he was eating dinner," Crix continued. "But somehow he knew I was there. He threw his soup at me. Hot soup. It made me visible again. Then he stabbed me with a dinner fork and hit me with his chair until I had to run away." Several assassins made uncomfortable noises. Being defeated by soup and furniture was embarrassing for any killer. "That is just one human," Thane said. "Surely others have had better luck." An energy being named Zeta floated near the ceiling. Her species could pass through walls and move like lightning. She was one of the most feared assassins in the galaxy. "I was hired to kill a human engineer on a space station," Zeta said. Her voice buzzed like electricity. "I entered the station through the power systems. I thought it would be easy to surprise him." "But," Thane prompted, "he detected my energy signature somehow," Zeta continued. "Instead of running, he started changing the power settings on the station. He rerouted electricity through the walls and floors. He nearly trapped me in an electromagnetic cage. I'd barely escaped. How long did it take him to do this? Vera asked. 12 seconds, Zeta replied. The room fell silent again. 12 seconds was not enough time for most beings to even understand what was happening. But this human had turned an entire space station into a weapon in that time. More stories began to pour out. An assassin who tried to poison a human doctor, only to have the doctor somehow turn the poison into medicine. A killer who attempted to sabotage a human pilot's ship, but the pilot used the sabotage to make his engines run faster. A sniper who shot at a human soldier, only to watch the human use the bullet holes to aim his return fire more accurately. Thane listened to each story with growing concern. In 300 years of running the guild, he had never heard anything like this. Other species fought in predictable ways. They used standard weapons and followed normal tactics. But humans seemed to treat every attack as a puzzle to solve rather than a threat to avoid. There is something else, said an assassin called Rex. He was a cyborg from a machine species. Half his body was metal, and his brain was part computer. I accessed human military records to study their fighting methods. What did you find? Thane asked. They have a saying, Rex replied. Improvise, adapt, overcome. But they do not just say it, they live it. In every battle, humans use whatever they find around them as weapons. Rocks, sticks, kitchen tools, broken machines. They make everything deadly? That does not make them impossible to kill, Thane pointed out. No, Rex agreed. But it makes them impossible to predict. And if you cannot predict your target, you cannot plan their death. A young assassin named Luna spoke for the first time. She was new to the guild but had already completed several difficult jobs. My grandmother tried to kill a human once, Luna said quietly. 50 years ago. She was the best killer in our family for generations. What happened to her? Vera asked. She is still alive, Luna replied. But she will not talk about that job. All she says is that the human somehow convinced her to become a farmer instead of a killer. She grows vegetables now and says she is happier. This was perhaps the most disturbing story yet. An assassin being convinced to change careers was unheard of. Killers were trained from birth to do one thing. The idea that a human could make one decide to grow plants instead was terrifying. Thane looked around the table at his best killers. All of them looked worried. Some were even frightened. In all his years, he had never seen anything like this. The guild has a reputation to protect, Thane said finally. We do not refuse jobs because they are difficult. This is not about difficulty, Crix replied from the shadows. This is about survival. Humans do not just fight differently. They think differently. They see solutions where others see problems. They turn weakness into strength and enemies into friends. Sometimes they even turn assassins into farmers, Luna added quietly. Thane considered his options. The guild had never officially refused a contract based on the target species, but they had also never faced a target like humans before. Very well, Thane said after a long pause. For the first time in guild history, we are declaring an entire species off limits. No member will accept contracts against human targets, regardless of payment offered. The assassins looked relieved. Some even smiled, which was unusual for killers. But what do we tell the client? Rex asked. Thane's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. We tell them that humans are too dangerous for even us to handle, and we suggest they find a different way to solve their problem. As the meeting ended and the assassins left through various secret exits, Thane remained in his chair. He stared at the contract details still glowing on his screen. 150 million credits for 2 humans. It was more money than some planets made in a year. But no amount of credits was worth the risk of facing an enemy who could turn anything into a weapon and anyone into an ally. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galaxy's most feared killers had admitted defeat without even trying to fight. Kyle Martinez stood at the speaking platform in front of 10,000 alien delegates. The massive chamber was so quiet he could hear his own heartbeat. Every eye, tentacle, and sensor was focused on him. Behind him, a large screen showed the official seal of Earth. Lisa Green stood to his right, her hand resting casually near her weapon. She looked calm, but Kyle knew she was counting exit routes and watching for threats. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," Kyle began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I come before you today with a proposal that will change how our galaxy handles conflict." A ripple of nervous energy moved through the crowd. When humans said they wanted to change things, it usually meant something unexpected was about to happen. Kyle touched a button on his control pad. The screen behind him changed to show a star map of the galaxy. Red dots marked areas where wars and conflicts were happening. "Right now, there are 47 active conflicts in our galaxy," Kyle continued. "Millions of beings are dying, billions more live in fear. Trade routes are blocked. Resources are wasted on weapons instead of homes. And schools," the delegates nodded. This was all true, and everyone knew it. But they had been trying to solve these problems for thousands of years without much success. "Traditional diplomacy takes too long," Kyle said. "By the time negotiations end, entire planets have been destroyed. Military intervention usually makes things worse. We need a new approach." The screen changed again. Now it showed images of human peacekeepers working on different worlds. They were not carrying big weapons or flying in warships. Instead, they were talking to people, fixing broken machines, and helping rebuild damaged cities. "Earth proposes to establish a galaxy-wide peacekeeping force," Kyle announced. "Human teams will respond to conflicts anywhere in the galaxy. We will work to solve problems before they become wars." The reaction was immediate. Thousands of aliens began talking at once. Some sounded angry, others sounded worried. A few even sounded interested. The Centauran delegate stood up. His blue tentacles waved in agitation. "You want to police the entire galaxy?" he demanded. "What gives humans the right to interfere in our affairs?" Kyle had expected this question. "We do not want to police anyone," he replied calmly. "We want to help solve problems. Look at our track record." The screen changed to show statistics. In the past 2 years, human mediators had been involved in solving 12 major conflicts. All 12 had ended without war. The average time to reach a solution was 6 weeks, compared to 6 months for traditional diplomacy. "How do you do it so quickly?" asked a delegate from the vegan system. Her species looked like tall, thin birds with colorful feathers. Lisa stepped forward slightly. Her movement made several delegates lean back in their seats. "We approach problems differently," she said. "We do not follow standard procedures. We look for solutions that others might not consider." "Can you give us an example?" the bird-like delegate asked. Kyle smiled. 3 months ago, 2 mining companies were fighting over asteroid rights in the Tau system. They had been arguing for 2 years. Traditional mediators said it would take another year to solve. "What did your people do?" our mediator suggested. "They stopped fighting over who owned the asteroids and start working together to mine them more efficiently," Kyle explained. She showed them that cooperation would make both companies more money than competition ever could. "How long did this take?" the Centaurian delegate asked. 4 days, Lisa replied. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. 4 days to solve a 2-year conflict was almost impossible to believe. An elderly delegate from the Rigel colony stood up slowly. His species was known for being very wise and careful with their decisions. "These results are impressive," he admitted. "But why should we trust humans with this responsibility? Your species has a reputation for being unpredictable." Kyle nodded. "That is exactly why you should trust us," he said. "Our unpredictability is our greatest strength. When people cannot guess what we will do next, they have to actually listen to our ideas instead of preparing counter-arguments." The screen showed another example. A human negotiator had ended a trade war by suggesting that both sides compete in a cooking contest instead of an economic battle. The contest had been so much fun that the 2 species had become close trading partners. "We do not think like other species," Kyle continued. "We see opportunities where others see obstacles. We find common ground where others see only differences." A delegate from the Outer Rim systems raised a question. What about the rumor that even assassins refuse to target humans? Are you too dangerous to be peacekeepers? This question made the entire chamber fall silent. Everyone had heard the stories about the Assassin Guild's new policy, Lisa answered this time. The guild refuses our contracts because we are hard to predict, not because we are violent. An assassin needs to know how their target will react. Humans react differently every time. This is exactly what makes us good peacekeepers, Kyle added. When you cannot predict what someone will do, you have to talk to them instead of fighting them. The logic was strange but sound. If humans were too unpredictable for professional killers to handle, they might also be too unpredictable for warring. Factions to fight against. What would these peacekeeping teams actually do? Asked a delegate from the core worlds. Kyle had prepared for this question too. Small teams of 3 to 5 humans would respond to conflict requests. They would have no authority to make laws or force decisions. Their only job would be to help the fighting parties find solutions they could all accept. And if they refuse to listen to your solutions, the Centauran delegate pressed, then we document everything that happens next, Lisa said simply. We record who does what and why. We make sure the galaxy knows exactly who chooses war over peace. This was perhaps the most frightening part of the proposal. Humans were known for their detailed record-keeping and their willingness to share embarrassing information. The threat of having their bad decisions broadcast to the entire galaxy was often worse than military intervention. You would shame us into behaving? The bird-like delegate asked. We would give you a choice, Kyle corrected. Solve your problems peacefully or explain to everyone why you chose violence instead. The room was quiet as delegates considered this approach. It was not like anything they had seen before. Humans were offering to solve conflicts not through force or authority, but through creativity and social pressure. The council president stood up. His forearms gestured for attention. This proposal requires careful consideration, he announced. We will recess for deliberation. As the delegates began filing out of the chamber, Kyle noticed something interesting. Instead of avoiding the human section like they usually did, some aliens were approaching to ask questions. A few even seemed excited about the possibilities. Think it worked? Lisa asked quietly. Kyle watched a group of delegates from different species talking together about the proposal. I think we gave them something they have never had before, he replied. What is that? Hope that there might be a better way to solve problems than fighting about them. As they left the platform, Kyle felt optimistic. The proposal was unusual, but that was exactly what made it appealing. In a galaxy tired of endless conflicts, maybe it was time to try something completely different. Maybe it was time to let the most unpredictable species in space show everyone a new way to make peace. 3 months after Kyle's speech to the council, war was coming to the Meridian system. Everyone could see it happening, but nobody knew how to stop it. The Corvan Empire controlled the military side of the system. They had big ships, strong weapons, and soldiers who had been fighting for generations. The Corvan people believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. The Deltan Consortium owned the business side of the system. They had money, trade ships, and mining equipment that could strip an asteroid bare in days. The Deltan people believed that profit was the most important thing in life. Both groups wanted the same thing. There were 7 planets in the Meridian system that were full of rare metals. These metals were worth billions of credits and could power starships for decades. The Corvans said the planets belonged to them because their ancestors had discovered the system first. The Deltans said the planets belonged to them because they had the technology to actually mine the metals. For 6 months, both sides had been building up their fleets. Corvan warships gathered at the edge of the system. Deltan mining vessels, equipped with weapons, moved into defensive positions around the planets. Every diplomatic attempt had failed. The Galactic Council had sent 3 different teams of negotiators. Each team had spent weeks trying to find a compromise. Each team had given up in frustration. The problem was simple. Both sides were completely right according to their own laws and customs. Both sides were also completely wrong according to the other side's laws and customs. There seemed to be no middle ground. Then the council decided to try something new. They approved humanity's peacekeeping proposal on a trial basis. If humans could prevent this war, they would be allowed to handle other conflicts across the galaxy. Commander Jake Phillips received the assignment on a Tuesday morning. He was eating breakfast on Earth when his communication device started buzzing. With urgent messages, Jake was 42 years old and had been a soldier for 20 years. He had fought in 3 wars and helped end 2 others through negotiation. He was known for finding solutions that nobody else had thought of. "Sir," his assistant said as Jake read the mission briefing, "both sides have already rejected all diplomatic solutions. Their fleets will be in firing range of each other in 10 days. How are we supposed to stop a war in 10 days? Jake finished his coffee and smiled. "We are not going to stop the war," he said. "We are going to make them stop it themselves." Jake's ship, the USS Defiance, was not a warship. It was small and fast, built for moving quickly between star systems. His crew was only 12 people, but each one was specially trained in conflict resolution. When they arrived in the Meridian system, both fleets were already in position. Hundreds of ships faced each other across empty space. Weapons were charged. Shields were raised. Everyone was waiting for someone to make the first move. Jake sent messages to both fleet commanders, requesting permission to meet with them. Both commanders agreed, probably because they were curious about what humans would try to do. The Corvan commander was a huge alien with thick armor and scars from many battles. "Human," he growled, "you waste your time here. This conflict will be decided by strength, not words." The Deltan commander was smaller but wore expensive clothes covered in jewels. "The Corvans understand only violence," she said. "There is no point in talking to them." Jake listened to both sides explain why war was inevitable. Then he surprised them both with his response. "You are both right," he said. "This conflict cannot be solved through normal diplomacy, so we are not going to try normal diplomacy. Instead of meeting with the fleet commanders again, Jake did something that confused everyone. He requested permission to broadcast a message directly to the civilian populations of both the Corvan and Deltan homeworlds. "What does he want to talk to civilians for?" the Corvan commander asked his staff. "Wars are fought by soldiers, not farmers and shopkeepers." But Jake understood something that the military leaders had forgotten. Wars might be fought by soldiers, but they were supported by civilians. If the people back home stopped supporting the war, the soldiers would have. To come home, Jake's broadcast was simple and direct. He appeared on screens across both star systems, wearing his plain blue uniform and speaking in a calm voice. "My name is Commander Jake Phillips of the Human Peacekeeping Corps," he began. "I am here because your governments are about to start a war over some planets in the Meridian system." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "I have read all the legal documents. I have studied the history of both your peoples. I have reviewed the mining surveys and the military assessments." Another pause. "Here is what I learned. You are both right about your legal claims. You are both wrong about how to solve this problem. And if you go to war, you will both lose everything that really matters to you." Jake's next statement shocked everyone listening. "The Human Peacekeeping Corps will not take sides in this conflict. We will not help either fleet fight the other. Instead, we are going to do something different." The screen behind Jake changed. To show a technical diagram, "We are establishing a permanent monitoring station right here in the Meridian system. This station will be staffed by human observers 24 hours a day. These observers will record everything that happens in this system. Every ship movement, every weapon fired, every order given. All of this information will be broadcast live to every planet in the galaxy. The implications hit both sides immediately. If they went to war, every detail would be recorded and shared with the entire galactic community. Every civilian death, every destroyed ship, every tactical mistake would be preserved forever. We will not judge who is right or wrong," Jake continued. "We will simply make sure that everyone in the galaxy knows exactly what each side chooses to do." This was psychological warfare of a type nobody had ever seen before. Humans were turning the concept of historical accountability into a weapon. Jake's final statement was the most effective part of his broadcast. In 1 week, the galaxy will know whether the Corvan Empire and the Deltan Consortium are peoples who solve problems through wisdom or through violence. The choice is entirely yours. The response was immediate. On both homeworlds, civilians began contacting their governments. Parents asked why their children should die for some distant planets. Business owners worried about how a war would affect trade relationships with other species. Within 3 days, both sides requested a meeting with Jake, not to negotiate a surrender, but to ask if there might be alternatives to fighting. Jake smiled when he received these messages. Now we can start actually solving the problem, he told his crew. The solution, when it came, was simple and elegant. Instead of fighting over who owned the planets, both sides would work together to mine them. Profits would be shared based on how much each side contributed to the mining operations. The Corvans would provide security for the mining ships. The Deltans would provide the technology and expertise for extraction. Both sides would benefit more from cooperation than either could gain from war. Within a week of Jake's broadcast, both fleets had stood down. The first joint Corvan-Deltan mining operation began 2 months later. The galaxy had its first successful human peacekeeping mission. And everyone had learned something important about how humans approached conflict resolution. They did not try to be stronger than their opponents. They simply made sure that everyone involved understood the real costs of their choices. 1 year later, the same Galactic Council chamber looked very different. The empty chairs around the human section were gone. Alien delegates now sat close to Kyle Martinez and his team. Some even wore small human peacekeeping badges on their formal robes. Kyle stood at the same speaking platform where he had made his proposal 12 months ago. But today he was not asking for permission. He was receiving official recognition for what humans had already accomplished. The numbers were impressive. In 1 year, human peacekeeping teams had handled 23 major conflicts. 21 had been resolved without any fighting. The other 2 had ended quickly when both sides realized the galaxy was watching their every move. Lisa Green, now wearing the uniform of an admiral, sat in the front row with other senior peacekeeping officers. She had been promoted to lead the entire human peacekeeping corps under her command. The force had grown from 12 people to over 3,000. The council president stood up to address the assembly. His forearms gestured toward Kyle with obvious respect. Ambassador Martinez, he began, when you first proposed human peacekeeping services, many of us were skeptical. We thought your species was too unpredictable to handle such responsibility. Quiet laughter rippled through the chamber. The word unpredictable no longer sounded like an insult when applied to humans. We have learned that unpredictability can be a valuable tool for peace, the president continued. Your people have shown us new ways to solve old problems. Kyle smiled as he remembered some of the more unusual solutions his teams had found. On Vega Prime, a human negotiator had ended a water rights dispute by teaching both sides how to build better irrigation systems. On Beta Station, another team had stopped a trade war by organizing a joint space racing tournament. The strangest success had been on Rigel 7, where 2 species had been fighting over religious differences for centuries. A human mediator had convinced them to write a joint opera about their shared history instead of fighting about it. The opera had become so popular that both species now worked together to perform it across the galaxy. Admiral Green stepped up to the microphone when Kyle finished his remarks. Her presence still made some aliens nervous, but now it was the kind of nervousness people felt around celebrities rather than around dangerous predators. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, she began, I want to talk about what we have learned from this experiment in human peacekeeping. She touched a control, and the large screen showed a map of the galaxy. Green dots marked successful peacekeeping missions. Red dots showed ongoing conflicts that humans had not yet been asked to handle. The most important thing we learned is that violence is usually not about hatred or greed, Green said. Most conflicts happen because people think they have no other choice. This was a lesson that had surprised many alien governments. They had assumed that wars started because different species naturally hated each other, but human peacekeepers had discovered that most enemies were simply people who had run out of ideas for solving their problems. Our job is not to force anyone to make peace, Green continued. Our job is to help them see choices they did not know they had. She clicked to the next slide, which showed statistics about human peacekeeping methods. The data was remarkable. Human teams used weapons in less than 2% of their missions. Most of their tools were communication devices, mobile workshops, and databases full of creative solutions from other conflicts. We succeed because we approach every problem with fresh eyes, Green explained. We do not assume that traditional methods are the only methods. We look for solutions that benefit everyone involved. An alien delegate from the Outer Rim raised a question. Admiral Green, there are rumors that the Assassin Guild still refuses to accept contracts against human targets. Is this true? Green nodded. It is true, but not because they fear our weapons or our military. They refuse because they cannot predict how we will respond to threats. She paused and looked around the chamber. This same unpredictability that makes us difficult to kill also makes us effective peacekeepers. When people cannot guess what we will do next, they have to actually listen to our suggestions. The transformation in how aliens viewed humans was remarkable. A year ago, most species had seen humans as dangerous because they were unpredictable. Now they saw humans as valuable for exactly the same reason. Kyle returned to the microphone for his closing remarks. We did not seek this role because we wanted power over other species, he said. We accepted it because we understood something. That took the rest of the galaxy longer to realize. He gestured toward the mixed crowd of alien delegates. Many of them now displayed human peacekeeping symbols alongside their own cultural decorations. Peace is not about being strong enough to defeat your enemies, Kyle continued. Peace is about being creative enough to turn your enemies into friends. This philosophy had become the foundation of human peacekeeping. Instead of trying to win conflicts, humans tried to transform them into opportunities for cooperation. The ceremony concluded with an announcement that surprised everyone. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to expand human peacekeeping services to cover the entire galaxy. Any species experiencing conflict could now request human mediation. As delegates filed out of the chamber, conversations buzzed with excitement about future possibilities. The Altarian security chief, whose people had once produced the galaxy's most feared assassins, was discussing joint training programs with human peacekeepers. The Corvan military commander, who had nearly gone to war over the Meridian system, was asking human advisors to help train his officers in nonviolent conflict resolution. Even the Deltan business leaders were incorporating human negotiation techniques into their trade agreements. Kyle and Lisa walked together toward the exit, surrounded by alien dignitaries who wanted to discuss future cooperation. The change from a year ago was dramatic. Instead of avoiding humans, other species now actively sought their help. Do you think we can really keep this up? Lisa asked. Quietly, the galaxy is a big place with a lot of problems. Kyle looked around at the diverse crowd of aliens who were now working together on solutions instead of fighting over differences. I think we already proved something important, he replied. What is that? We showed everyone that there is always another way to solve a problem. You just have to be willing to think differently about it. As they left the council building, Kyle reflected on how completely the situation had changed. Humans had started as the species that even assassins were afraid to target. They had become the species that everyone wanted on their side. The galaxy had learned that the most dangerous weapon was not the one that destroyed enemies. It was the one that convinced enemies to become allies instead. Humans had won not by being the strongest or the smartest. They had won by being the most creative problem solvers in a galaxy full of problems that needed solving, and now that the rest of the galaxy understood this, peace had finally become possible on a scale that no one had ever imagined before. The age of human peacekeeping had officially begun.